What's going on, guys? This is Mr. Teej 66 Movie Reviews. I am Mr. Teej 66. Well, in honor of the new Hellboy film coming out this weekend, I decided to take a look at the original film, 2004's Hellboy, written and directed by Guillermo del Toro, and starring Ron Perlman as a beast from hell who's brought to Earth as a baby and raised by humans to fight the forces of evil. Eventually, he has to fight Rasputin, a Russian monk or whatever. He's based on a guy from history, I forget, but he wants to unleash the Agro Jihad. I probably said that wrong. Basically, a bunch of snake-like demons who want to come down and burn the earth to cinders and start the apocalypse, and he has to stop them, and that's your basic plot. Now, I remember when this movie first came out back in 2004, God, a long time ago, and I remember seeing the trailers being like, that is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen. I had no idea it was based on a comic book. I subsequently read some of the comics, and they're very interesting. I mean, very abstract and not always the greatest storytelling. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it wasn't, but it was more about visual imagery. But wow, Mike Mignola is a fantastic artist. I really have a huge amount of respect for him. But the film version here it's somewhat different from the comics, as it always is. But most of the changes they make are for the better. This movie is a lot of fun. I watched it recently, and still a blast. Guillermo del Toro is such a wonderful artistic director. I mean, the color scheme in this movie is absolutely fantastic. Just beautiful shot selections, just a visual feast. If nothing else, you can say this movie is visually spectacular. The storyline is surprisingly emotional. I think that's what really shocked me the first time, is how much you really come to care about Hellboy, and they really flesh his character out and make him into a three-dimensional person. It's helped immensely by Ron Perlman, who is just perfectly cast in this movie. He's basically a plumber, or a factory worker or something. He's just a blue-collar, working stiff guy who just happens to be a big demon, with horns and a tail. And there's just wonderful little touches how he shaves his horns down to fit in better. There's a conspiracy theories about his existence, which is being kept secret by the government. Just a blast. When these characters are sitting around being themselves, it's wonderful. In fact, that's the best part of the film. I could see this as being like a straight comedy with no action or, end of the world stuff, and it would be awesome. But Perlman is easily the highlight of this movie, acting-wise. Everyone else does solid enough work. You have Ian Holm as, no, not Ian Holm, I just forgot the actor's name. John Hurt. John Hurt as his father, and he brings a huge amount of gravitas to the film. He has opening narration, which, if any other actor said it, it would be absolutely ridiculous, but he absolutely owns it. But he's sort of the mentor figure, and he does a great job, just because he's John Hurt. I mean, that man could say anything, and you'd believe him. Selma Blair as his love interest is solid enough. I think they have some nice chemistry. Doug Jones as Abe Sapien, although voiced by an uncredited David Hyde Pierce. He's a weird character and, sort of a fish man. His character is kind of written out of the second half, though. I was kind of pissed about that, because I think he could have done a lot more in the climax, but whatever. Jeffrey Tambor is there as an FBI agent, dry as hell. Like, these ridiculous things are going on. He's taking it completely seriously, but not too seriously. The movie itself really... it embraces its goofiness. Like, the fight scenes are, people get thrown through windows, through walls, that they're picking up, like, payphones, smacking each other with it. There's a character called Samael, a demon who Hellboy fights a couple times. They have a fight scene in a train station, which is one of the better comic book fights I've ever seen. They are just beating the piss out of each other. Just a blast. Some of the action scenes are a little generic. Some of them are. It depends. I love his stone hand, though. They make great use of that. I would basically can use it as a weapon, sort of like a shield. And there's some plot elements with his hand, which I won't go into if you haven't seen the movie. But yeah, overall, just a goofy blast. The movie's not perfect, though. The villain, Rasputin, I thought was kind of dull. He has a cool voice, but he has some motivation, but I just found him kind of flat and boring. Although he has a great side subordinate villain called Cronin, which is basically this Nazi scientist who's been, like, conditioned to live. It's a little fuzzy on what he is, but he is actually way more threatening than Rasputin. I wish he'd been the main villain. But yeah, the main villain's a little dull. At the climax, where spoiler warning, I guess, where they convince Hellboy because he's the key to the apocalypse. He has to put his stone hand in like a sarcophagus, whatever, and bring the Agra Jihad down, whatever. It's just very rushed. Like all of a sudden, 1 second he's like, I must do this. And the side, John Myers, I forgot to mention him. Rupert Myers plays this character called John Myers, who's a new, agent to the field. Basically, he's the audience, identification character. He's a little boring, but it's more the fault of the character than the actual actor. But he tags along, and at the end, he's like, "Remember who you are," and Hellboy's just sort of like, "Okay, I turn back now." It's like, okay, that was quick. Like, it just felt like the movie had to wrap up very fast, and I don't buy it, and it feels very rushed, and I really wish they'd spent more time, like, developing suspense for that, but overall, this movie is a lot of fun. It's for genre fans who like this sort of thing. Roger Ebert said it best, if this is the kind of stuff you like, you'll like it. It doesn't have, I wouldn't say it has much outside interest to anyone not familiar into like comic book fantasies, because it is kind of ridiculous. Actually, I take that back, very ridiculous. But if you're into this stuff, you'll enjoy it, which I am. So I would give this movie an 8.5. I think it's a lot of fun, flawed at times, but it has a huge heart, big action sequences, a fantastic performance from Ron Perlman. David Harbour has a lot to live up to. We'll have to see. Hopefully I'll be seeing that movie this weekend, so I'll give you my thoughts on that. But anyway, 8.5. This is Mr. T66, and I will see you next time.